I'll give you 3 chances tonight, she offered to the shy CEO. If you touch me with confidence, I'll marry you tonight. Hi, my very beautiful and loyal family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Before we begin, let's say a beautiful short prayer together. Dear Lord, I thank you for this amazing family of mine. Bless each heart listening right now. Bring peace to their minds, healing to their bodies, and joy to their souls. Let love, hope, and grace fill their lives every single day. Amen. And my beautiful family, if you like my work, then like it from your heart. I will never force you, because forcing means I'm insulting my own work, doubting the abilities God gave me. And I don't do that. I believe in what I bring to you, with love, with fire, with truth. Are you present, my family? Let's hold hands in spirit. Take a deep breath. Now let's start the story. Chapter 1. Destined Collision. The scent of rain hung heavy in the air as Gabriel Laurent made his way through the wrought iron gates of Evergreen Community Garden. This early morning ritual had become his solace over the past few months. A brief reprieve from the emptiness of his penthouse and the suffocating boardrooms where he spent most of his waking hours. Here, among the carefully tended plots of vegetables and fragrant herbs, he could breathe without the weight of expectations pressing down on his chest. Gabriel moved with the careful precision that characterized everything he did, his tall frame, navigating the narrow paths as though afraid to disturb even the dew clinging to the leaves. At 32, he possessed the kind of striking looks that turned heads, strong jawline, penetrating hazel eyes, and thick, dark hair that fell across his forehead in a way that softened his otherwise serious expression. Yet despite his success, as head of Laurent Architectural Innovations, he carried himself with the watchfulness of someone accustomed to making himself invisible. The garden was unusually empty this morning, most regular visitors likely deterred by the threatening storm clouds. Gabriel welcomed the solitude, trailing his fingers lightly over lavender stems as he walked, inhaling the calming scent. This place represented everything his life lacked: organic chaos, vibrant color, the messy miracle of growth and decay, existing in perfect balance. Lost in thought, he rounded the corner near the medicinal herb section and collided with unexpected warmth. "Oh!" A startled female voice broke through his reverie as his chest met resistance, and something clattered to the ground between them. Gabriel stumbled back, mortified. "I'm so sorry, I wasn't—" The words died in his throat as he looked down into the most luminous brown eyes he'd ever seen. The woman before him seemed to embody the garden itself, vibrant, alive, unapologetically present in a way that made the air around her seem charged with possibility. Her rich mahogany skin glowed with health, high cheekbones accentuated by the early morning light filtering through the leaves above. Dozens of tiny braids were gathered into an elaborate crown atop her head, adorned with what appeared to be small sprigs of fresh herbs woven throughout. "It's entirely my fault," she said, her voice melodic with hints of a southern accent. "I was completely distracted by these chamomile flowers. They're perfectly ready this morning." She gestured to the wicker basket now overturned at their feet. Its contents, bundles of herbs tied with twine, small glass jars and various gardening tools, scattered across the path. Gabriel dropped immediately to his knees, grateful for something to do with his hands. "Please, let me help. I should have been watching where I was going." They reached for a sprig of rosemary simultaneously, their fingers brushing against each other. Gabriel felt a jolt of electricity race up his arm, so unexpected and powerful that he pulled back as though burned. The woman's eyes widened slightly, suggesting she'd felt it too. "I'm Trinity," she offered, her smile revealing a slight gap between her front teeth that somehow made her even more captivating. "Trinity Rhodes. I volunteer here 3 mornings a week before my nursing shifts." "Gabriel," he replied, his usual reserve making him economical with words. "Gabrielle Laurent." Recognition flickered across her features. Laurent? As in the Laurent Tower downtown? The one with the rooftop garden that collects rainwater for the entire building? Gabrielle nodded, surprised. Most people who recognized his name immediately mentioned his wealth or his late uncle's legacy. Few ever noticed the environmental innovations he'd incorporated into his designs. That's the first vertical garden system in the city that actually works with our climate instead of against it, Trinity continued, genuine admiration in her voice. My grandmother has been trying to get the city council to approve something similar for low-income housing communities for years. Before Gabriel could respond, thunder rumbled ominously overhead. Large drops began to fall, quickly intensifying, from sporadic patter to steady downpour. Come on, Trinity said, gathering her recovered belongings and grabbing his hand with the casual confidence of someone unaccustomed to hesitation. The gazebo's closer than the entrance. Her fingers wrapped around his with surprising strength as she pulled him through the thickening curtain of rain. Gabriel followed, acutely aware of the unfamiliar sensation of another person's touch, something he'd carefully avoided for years. Trinity moved with purpose, somehow managing to protect her basket of herbs while navigating them both to the small wooden structure at the garden's center. They arrived at the gazebo, breathless, water streaming from their clothes. Trinity's white cotton dress clung to her curves, now nearly transparent from the rain. Gabriel averted his eyes, shrugging off his light jacket and offering it to her with outstretched hand. "Thank you," she said, draping it around her shoulders without the self-consciousness he might have expected. Grandmother always says I need to check the weather report instead of just feeling the air, but I swear this storm wasn't supposed to arrive until afternoon. The gazebo offered shelter, but little escape from the humidity that now hung thick between them. Gabriel ran a hand through his wet hair, hyper-aware of their sudden isolation and proximity. Rain created a translucent wall around them, transforming the small wooden structure into an island separate from the world. "You mentioned your grandmother," Gabriel said, desperate to break the charged silence. "She works with city planning." Trinity's face softened at the mention of her grandmother. "Josephine Rhodes. She's been fighting for green spaces in underserved neighborhoods for decades. The city council treats her like a nuisance, but the community gardens in this district exist because she refused to give up." She began methodically sorting through her basket, checking that none of her glass jars had broken in the fall. "She raised me after we lost my parents, taught me everything. I know about healing plants. I'm sorry about your parents," Gabriel said softly, the familiar weight of loss resonating in his chest. Trinity looked up, something in his tone making her truly study him for the first time. "It was a house fire when I was 12. I still dream about it sometimes. The heat, the noise, neighbors holding me back when I tried to run inside." She spoke matter-of-factly, the way people do about grief they've carried so long it's become part of their anatomy. "What about you? There's something in your eyes that recognizes this kind of pain." The directness of her observation startled him. Most people in Gabriel's world maintained careful distance from uncomfortable truths, dancing around emotions with practiced social choreography. Trinity's question cut through pretense like a blade. "My mother," he said, surprising himself. With his honesty, "overdosed when I was 6. I barely remember her face now, just the smell of her perfume and the sound of her crying through bathroom doors." Trinity nodded, no pity in her expression, just quiet understanding. "And your father?" "Never met him. He was gone before I was born." Gabriel leaned against one of the gazebo's wooden pillars, lightning briefly illuminating the garden around them. "I grew up in foster care until my uncle found me when I was 18. He died 2 years later and left me everything." "So you became Rich but stayed just as alone, Trinity observed, her insight unsettling in its accuracy. Rain drummed against the gazebo roof, creating a private symphony around them. Gabriel watched as Trinity carefully arranged her harvested herbs on the small bench, her movements graceful and intentional. She separated chamomile blossoms from stems with practiced efficiency, the scent of crushed herbs mingling with petrichor from the storm. "These are for my grandmother," she explained, noticing his interest. "Chamomile for her arthritis, lavender to help her sleep, rosemary to strengthen her memory. Modern medicine keeps her alive, but these keep her spirit strong." "You believe in that? Plant medicine?" Gabriel asked, not skeptically, but with genuine curiosity. Trinity smiled. "I believe in both worlds. I'm 3 months away from finishing my nursing degree, but I've been apprenticing with traditional healers since I was 13. The body responds to chemicals, whether they come from a pharmaceutical lab or a garden bed." She held a sprig of lavender to her nose, inhaling deeply before offering it to him. "The difference is in knowing which remedy feeds the soul while healing the body." Gabriel accepted the lavender, fingers carefully avoiding contact with hers this time. He breathed in the calming scent, surprised at how it immediately loosened something tight in his chest. "My grandmother says plants remember the touch of those who tend them," Trinity continued, her voice taking on a storytelling quality that suggested repeated tellings. "She claims you can taste the difference in herbs harvested by loving hands versus those picked without intention." "And what do you believe?" Gabriel asked, finding himself genuinely interested in her answer. Trinity considered the question seriously. "I believe connection matters, to plants, to people, to places. I've seen patients recover more quickly when they feel truly seen and cared for, not just medically treated." Her eyes met his with unexpected intensity. "I think the same principle applies to everything. We all grow better when touched with intention and care." Something in her words sent a shiver through Gabriel that had nothing to do with his damp clothes. When was the last time anyone had touched him with true intention? Had anyone ever? The rain intensified, sheets of water cascading from the gazebo roof to create a curtain around them. Lightning flashed again, closer this time, illuminating Trinity's face in stark relief. High cheekbones, full lips, eyes that seemed to see straight through the carefully constructed walls around his heart. "You don't let people touch you, do you?" she asked suddenly, her perception almost unnerving. "Not really. Not in ways that matter." Gabriel stiffened, instinctively retreating into the cool, professional demeanor that had served him well in boardrooms and social functions. "I don't see how that's relevant to—" "It's relevant to everything," Trinity interrupted gently. "Humans need touch, like plants need sunlight. Without it we might survive, but we can't truly thrive." Before Gabriel could formulate a response, Trinity moved toward him with the deliberate grace of someone approaching a wild animal. She stopped just before him, close enough that he could smell the herbal essence clinging to her skin beneath the fresh scent of rain. "I have a proposal," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper that somehow carried clearly above the storm. "Something completely unexpected and probably inadvisable." Gabriel found himself holding his breath, unable to step back despite every instinct telling him to maintain distance. What kind of proposal? Lightning flashed again, followed immediately by a crack of thunder that seemed to shake the very foundation of the gazebo. In that electrically charged moment, Trinity's eyes held his with an intensity that rooted him to the spot. "I'll give you 3 chances tonight," she offered, her words sending a current through his body more powerful than the storm surrounding them. "If you touch me with confidence, I'll marry you tonight." The audacity of her statement hung between them, outrageous and thrilling. Gabriel searched her face for signs of mockery or manipulation, but found only sincere challenge tinged with something that looked surprisingly like hope. "You don't even know me," he managed finally, his voice rougher than intended. Trinity's smile deepened, revealing again that enchanting gap between her front teeth. I know enough. I know how you look at growing things, with reverence and longing. I know you built an entire skyscraper that nurtures plants because you understand their value better than most. I know loss has shaped you, but not destroyed your capacity for beauty. She tilted her head slightly. And I know what it feels like when someone has been starving for real connection so long they've forgotten how to reach for it. Gabriel swallowed, hard, her words landing with uncomfortable precision. And what makes you think I'd want marriage, to you or anyone? Perhaps you don't, Trinity acknowledged with a slight shrug that somehow lacked any dismissiveness. But I saw how you touched that rosemary, like it was something precious and alive. Someone capable of that gentleness deserves the chance to direct it toward another person. Her eyes held his steadily. Everyone deserves to be touched with intention and care, Gabrielle Laurent. Even you. The sound of his full name on her lips felt strangely intimate, as though she'd discovered a secret part of him simply by speaking it aloud. The rain began to ease around them, the worst of the storm passing even as something new and turbulent gathered force within Gabriel's chest. 3 chances, he repeated, testing the concept as much as the words. Trinity nodded solemnly. 3 opportunities to touch me with absolute certainty, no hesitation, no fear, no holding back. If you can connect with that kind of confidence, even once I'll know. Know what? Gabriel asked, drawn into her challenge despite himself, that you're capable of overcoming whatever keeps you isolated in that beautiful tower of yours. She gathered her basket and herbs, sensing the imminent end of their rain-enforced seclusion. That you might be worth loving. The presumption of her statement should have offended him. Instead, Gabriel found himself captivated by her audacity, by the implication that he might fail such a seemingly simple test. His entire life had been built on control and careful distance. The idea that someone could see through that facade to the uncertainty beneath was both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. The rain had subsided to a gentle patter, sunlight, already breaking through clouds to create jeweled droplets on surrounding foliage. Trinity stepped toward the gazebo steps, pausing to look back at Gabriel over her shoulder. I'm here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning, she said, a tone conversational, as though they'd been discussing nothing more significant than the weather. If you're interested in accepting my challenge. She descended the steps and moved into the glistening garden, her white dress still clinging to curves that Gabriel now found impossible to ignore. His jacket remained draped around her shoulders, the dark fabric stark against the white cotton, a visible reminder of their encounter. Gabriel watched her disappear among the verdant paths, his mind racing to process what had just occurred. In the span of a storm, this woman had somehow seen through defenses constructed over decades, identifying with unsettling accuracy the emptiness at his core that no amount of wealth or achievement had managed to fill. 3 chances to touch with. Confidence. The challenge echoed in his mind, fascinating and frightening in equal measure. Gabriel remained in the gazebo long after Trinity had gone, contemplating how a random collision in a garden might have just altered the trajectory of his carefully controlled life. As he finally stepped back into the rain-washed garden, Gabriel realized Trinity had left something beside him on the bench, a perfect sprig of rosemary, the herb of remembrance and fidelity wrapped in a small piece of paper. Unfolding it, he found a phone number and 5 words that made his heart race. First chance awaits your courage. Chapter 2. Whispers of Desire. For 3 days, Gabriel convinced himself to ignore Trinity's challenge. Such impulsiveness had no place in his carefully ordered world. Yet her sprig of rosemary remained on his bedroom nightstand, its fragrance filling his dreams with visions of luminous brown eyes and that captivating gap-toothed smile. By Friday morning, resistance crumbled. Gabriel arrived at the garden just as dawn painted the eastern sky with delicate brushstrokes of pink and gold. He found Trinity kneeling beside a bed of medicinal herbs, her graceful hands working soil with reverent familiarity. "You came," she said without looking up, as though she'd sensed his presence. Today she wore faded jeans and a simple yellow blouse, her braids gathered in a practical bun. Somehow, this casual attire made her even more beautiful than before. "I brought your jacket," Gabriel replied, holding out the dark garment he'd had. Professionally cleaned, Trinity finally looked up, morning light catching the amusement in her eyes. "Is that really why you came?" The question hung between them, challenging Gabriel to acknowledge the magnetic pull that had drawn him back to this place, to her. "I've been thinking about your proposal," he admitted, surprising himself with his directness. "It's unconventional." Trinity stood, brushing soil from her hands. "Conventional approaches rarely heal what's deeply broken." She accepted the jacket, her fingers deliberately brushing against his during the exchange. "Have you decided to accept my challenge?" Gabriel found himself simultaneously drawn to and unnerved by her directness. Women in his social circle spoke, in careful innuendos and strategic subtleties. Trinity's straightforward approach left no room for the comfortable ambiguity he typically preferred. "I've brought breakfast," he said instead of answering, gesturing to the basket he'd placed on a nearby bench. "There's a French bakery near my building that makes exceptional pain au chocolat." Trinity's laugh, rich and uninhibited, sent an unexpected warmth through his chest. A man who deflects personal questions with chocolate pastries knows the quickest path to forgiveness. They settled on a stone bench partially hidden by flowering jasmine. Morning light dappled through leaves, creating shifting patterns across Trinity's features as she bit into a pastry with unabashed pleasure. "Tell me something true about yourself, Gabrielle Laurent," she requested, licking a trace of chocolate from her lower lip. "Something you don't tell people at your corporate functions." Gabriel considered deflecting again, but found himself answering honestly. "I sleep with my windows open every night, even in winter." The confession felt strangely intimate. "After years in foster homes where I couldn't control anything about my environment, I need to feel the outside air to sleep." Trinity nodded, understanding in her eyes. "For me, it's candles. After the fire that took my parents, everyone thought I'd fear flames. Instead, I need that small, controlled light in darkness to feel safe." Their conversation flowed naturally. From there, authentic exchanges unmarred by the social pretenses Gabriel had mastered over years. Trinity spoke of her grandmother's battle with arthritis, her own struggle to balance nursing studies with caregiving responsibilities, her dream of opening a clinic combining traditional medicine with modern healthcare. Gabriel shared his architectural vision for green spaces integrated into urban environments, his efforts to fund community gardens in underserved neighborhoods, the emptiness of achievements without meaningful connections to celebrate them. "Would you like to see my favorite place here?" Trinity asked when they'd finished eating. She led him to a secluded corner where a stone pathway disappeared beneath a weeping willow. Ducking under trailing branches, they entered a natural cathedral, light filtering through cascading leaves to create an ethereal glow. A small stone bench nestled against the massive trunk, worn smooth by years of visitors. "My grandmother brought me here after my parents' funeral," Trinity explained, sitting on the bench and patting the space beside her. "I was angry, refusing to speak to anyone. She didn't force conversation, just sat with me for hours while I raged and wept, Gabriel lowered himself beside her, acutely aware of the narrow bench that forced their thighs to touch. "What changed?" he asked, genuinely curious about how she'd transformed grief into such vibrant presence. One day, instead of sitting in silence, she began reciting poetry. Pablo Neruda, love sonnets that seemed to have nothing to do with my situation. Trinity's voice softened with memory. When I finally asked why, she said, "Because your heart needs to remember that beauty exists alongside pain." She turned toward him, their faces now inches apart within the willow's sanctuary. "That's what I see in you, Gabriel. Someone who creates beauty but has forgotten how to experience it himself." Her perception cut through his carefully constructed defenses, seeing truths about him that even he struggled to acknowledge. The intimacy of being truly seen both terrified and exhilarated him. "Poetry saved you," he observed quietly. Trinity nodded. "Words that reminded me of possibilities beyond my pain." Her eyes held his with gentle intensity. "What saves you, Gabriel?" "Nothing yet," he admitted, the confession easier in this sanctuary of dappled light and whispering leaves. Something shifted in Trinity's expression, compassion without pity, understanding without judgment. Perhaps that could change. The moment, stretched between them, charged with possibilities, neither had voiced aloud. Gabriel felt drawn toward her, his body leaning slightly forward without conscious decision. "Is this your first chance?" Trinity whispered, her breath warm against his face. The question brought clarity to his swirling emotions. Gabriel reached up slowly, his hand moving to cradle her cheek with deliberate intention. His fingers trembled slightly against her warm skin, the contact both electric and terrifying. Trinity's eyes closed briefly at his touch, her expression one of gentle assessment rather than disappointment. When she looked at him again, her smile held both warmth and challenge. "A beautiful beginning," she murmured, "but not quite confidence." Gabriel withdrew his hand, strangely relieved rather than discouraged. "What happens now?" Trinity stood, brushing invisible wrinkles from her jeans. "Now I invite you to dinner at my grandmother's house tomorrow night. She's been curious about the man whose jacket I borrowed during Tuesday's storm." The invitation startled him. "You told your grandmother about me?" Trinity's laugh echoed within their willow sanctuary. "Gabriel, that woman knew something significant had happened before I even mentioned your name. She says rosemary doesn't give itself to just anyone." As they emerged from beneath the willow's protective canopy, Gabriel felt somehow changed, as though their conversation had altered something fundamental within him. The garden seemed more vivid, colors intensified, scents more potent. Trinity wrote her address on a slip of paper torn from her notebook. 7 o'clock. Bring wine if you'd like, but grandmother prefers company to gifts." Their fingers touched during the exchange, sending another current of awareness through Gabriel's body. This time he didn't pull away. "Until tomorrow," he said, folding the paper carefully into his pocket. Trinity smiled, the morning sun illuminating flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "Consider this a reprieve, Gabriel Laurent. Your second chance awaits you tomorrow night." As she walked away, Gabriel realized something profound had shifted. For the first time in years, he found himself looking forward to tomorrow with anticipation, rather than carefully managed expectations. The sprig of rosemary in his pocket seemed to warm against his chest, a reminder of possibilities he'd long ago stopped believing existed for someone like him. Chapter 3. Shattered Glass. The modest two-story house with its wraparound porch and weathered blue paint stood in stark contrast to the sleek minimalism of Gabriel's penthouse. Flower boxes overflowed with herbs and blooms, their fragrance perfuming the evening air. Gabriel hesitated at the bottom step, wine bottle in one hand, wildflower bouquet in the other, feeling strangely vulnerable. Before he could knock, the Door swung open to reveal an elderly woman with regal posture and keen eyes that belied her apparent fragility. Though her dark skin was mapped with wrinkles and her hair a crown of silver coils, something in her bearing reminded Gabriel immediately of Trinity. "You must be the architect who designs buildings that breathe," she said, her voice rich with the deeper cadence of Louisiana Bayou country. "I'm Josephine Rhodes. Come in before the mosquitoes do." The home's interior was a revelation. Walls adorned with vibrant paintings, shelves overflowing with books and jars of dried herbs, surfaces covered with photographs spanning generations. Unlike the sterile showcase homes in Gabriel's social circle, every corner here held evidence of lives fully lived. "Grandmother, stop interrogating him at the doorway," Trinity called, emerging from the kitchen in a simple blue dress that accentuated the warm undertones of her skin. She wore her hair loose tonight, natural coils framing her face in a halo of soft texture that made Gabriel's fingers itch to touch them. "I was merely introducing myself to the young man who's had you distracted all week," Josephine replied with a knowing smile. She accepted Gabriel's flowers with appreciation that felt genuine rather than performative. "Wildflowers rather than roses. You've been paying attention to what matters to my granddaughter." Dinner was served on mismatched china in a kitchen filled with mouth-watering aromas. Gabriel, accustomed to formal dining with calculated conversation, found himself enchanted by the Rhodes women's easy banter and direct questions. They spoke of community garden politics, Trinity's nursing studies, and Josephine's ongoing battle with the city council over green space initiatives without the carefully curated pretense he typically navigated. "Trinity tells me you grew up in foster care," Josephine remarked as she served blackberry cobbler for dessert. "Yet you've created buildings that nurture rather than simply house. That speaks to remarkable resilience." Gabriel set down his fork, surprised by how easily she addressed what most people carefully avoided mentioning. "I wanted to create spaces I wish I'd had access to as a child," he admitted. "Places that feel protective rather than simply functional." Josephine nodded as though he'd confirmed something she already knew. Those who've experienced true emptiness often become the most thoughtful architects of fullness. After dinner, Trinity suggested showing Gabriel the backyard garden while Josephine rested. The night air had cooled, fireflies punctuating the darkness with ephemeral light as they stepped onto the stone path winding through carefully tended beds. "Your grandmother is remarkable," Gabriel observed, following Trinity past fragrant rosemary bushes and towering sunflowers. "She's the strongest person I know," Trinity agreed, her voice soft with affection. "After the fire, she worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat while still making time to read me poetry every night." She paused beside a small fountain whose gentle burbling created peaceful background music. "I had nightmares for years, couldn't sleep without seeing flames. She would sit beside my bed until dawn if necessary, telling stories about plants that heal and stars that guide." The vulnerability in her voice stirred something protective in Gabriel. Without thinking, he reached for her hand, entwining his fingers with hers. "You were lucky to have her." Trinity squeezed his hand gently. "We make our own luck sometimes. Grandmother says tragedy either hardens your heart or breaks it open to greater compassion. The choice is always ours." They reached a small gazebo draped with climbing jasmine, its wooden bench offering perfect views of both garden and night sky. As they sat, Gabriel maintained his hold on Trinity's hand, surprised by how natural the connection felt. "What about you?" Trinity asked, turning toward him. "Who helped you survive after losing your mother?" Gabriel studied their joined hands, considering deflection but finding himself unable to maintain his usual guardedness in Trinity's presence. "Books, mostly. I disappeared into stories where children had adventures and happy endings seemed possible." He paused, uncomfortable with such personal disclosure yet unable to stop. And music. One foster home had an old piano. The mother taught me basics before they sent me back to the group home. Is that why you still play? Trinity asked. I noticed the calluses on your fingertips. Her observation startled him. Few people noticed such details about him. You have remarkable powers of perception. I notice what matters, she replied simply. Your hands tell stories your words haven't shared yet. The intimacy of her statement hung between them, drawing Gabriel inexorably toward her. When lightning flashed unexpectedly in the distance, both started at the sudden illumination. Storm's coming, Trinity observed, though neither moved to seek shelter. Grandmother's joints predicted it this morning. As if summoned by her words, rain began to fall, gentle at first, then with increasing intensity. They remained seated in the gazebo, watching sheets of water transform the garden into a shimmering wonderland. When a particularly bright flash of lightning illuminated Trinity's face, Gabriel was struck by an overwhelming urge to capture this moment, her profile against gathering darkness, raindrops creating a crystalline curtain around their sanctuary. Tell me more about these 3 chances, he said, his voice low to match the rain's gentle percussion on the gazebo roof. Trinity turned to face him fully, her expression serious despite the playfulness of their arrangement. Touch is our most primal language, Gabriel. Long before words, humans communicated through contact, comfort, warning, desire, acceptance. Her free hand rose to rest lightly against his chest. Your body speaks truths your words often hide. The warmth of her palm seemed to burn through his shirt, sending tendrils of awareness throughout his body. And what truth is it telling now? He asked, his voice rougher than intended. That you want connection, but fear its cost, she answered without hesitation. That you've learned to hold yourself apart as protection, Gabriel felt exposed, in ways that had nothing to do with physical vulnerability. And this test of yours, what exactly are you measuring? Not skill or technique, Trinity clarified, her fingers now tracing gentle patterns against his shirt. Confidence comes from certainty, knowing what you want and claiming it without hesitation. It's the difference between touching someone while wondering if you should and touching them because you cannot imagine doing otherwise. Her words resonated with something fundamental within him. Gabriel had built his entire adult life around careful calculation, weighing options and considering consequences. Spontaneity and certainty were foreign concepts in his emotional vocabulary. My first attempt was inadequate, he noted, remembering his trembling fingers against her cheek beneath the willow tree. Trinity's smile held encouragement rather than judgment. It was honest. That matters more than perfection. Another lightning flash illuminated the garden, followed immediately by a tremendous crack of thunder. The storm's intensity increased dramatically, wind driving rain beneath the gazebo's protective roof. A violent gust sent something crashing nearby, the sound of breaking glass punctuating the storm's fury. Trinity jumped to her feet. "The greenhouse!" She pointed toward a small structure at the garden's edge, where a section of glass wall had shattered. "Grandmother's seedlings!" Without hesitation, she darted from the gazebo into the downpour, Gabriel following instinctively. They reached the damaged greenhouse together, rain soaking them within seconds as they assessed the destruction. Wind had dislodged a tree branch, sending it through the glass wall and endangering trays of fragile seedlings now exposed to the storm's fury. "Help me move these inside!" Trinity shouted over the wind, already gathering trays of tiny plants. "These are medicinal herbs Grandmother's been nurturing for weeks." Gabriel quickly joined her efforts, carrying armloads of seedlings through the broken wall into the still protected interior. They worked in synchronized urgency, prioritizing the most vulnerable plants while rain pounded the glass roof overhead. When the last tray was safely inside, Trinity grabbed Gabriel's arm. The temporary cover. In that cabinet. He retrieved a folded tarp, understanding her intention immediately. Together they stretched the heavy material across the broken wall, fighting wind that threatened to tear it from their grasp. Rain plastered Trinity's dress to her body as she struggled to secure one corner with rope, her determination evident in every movement. Gabriel finally managed to fasten his side, then moved quickly to help Trinity with hers. Standing behind her, he reached around to take the rope from her cold fingers, his body instinctively sheltering hers from the wind. The tarp secured, neither moved immediately. Trinity's back pressed against Gabriel's chest, his arms still encircling her. For one suspended moment, they remained frozen in this unintentional embrace, awareness buzzing between them like electrical current. Then Trinity turned within the circle of his arms, her face tilted up to his, rain streaming down her cheeks like tears. Without conscious thought, Gabriel pulled her closer, one hand pressing firmly against the small of her back while the other cradled the nape of her neck. This time, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty in his touch, only the undeniable certainty that holding her was exactly what he was meant to do. "Gabriel," Trinity whispered, her hands coming to rest against his chest, neither pushing away nor pulling closer. He became acutely aware of her body against his, the curves his fingers now memorized, the warmth that defied the storm's chill, the heart beating in counterpoint to his own. This wasn't his second chance, he realized with sudden clarity. This was his body recognizing what his mind had been too cautious to acknowledge. "Not yet," he murmured against her temple, surprising himself with the words. "When I claim my second chance, it won't be in crisis or by accident." Trinity's smile bloomed slowly as she studied his face. "You're learning," she observed, something like pride warming her voice. As suddenly as it had intensified, the storm began to abate, wind decreasing though rain continued steadily. They separated reluctantly, practical concerns reasserting themselves. As they assessed the greenhouse repair, "This will hold until morning," Gabriel confirmed, checking the tarp's security. "I can arrange for proper glass replacement tomorrow," Trinity nodded, pushing wet hair from her face. "Thank you. These plants mean everything to Grandmother." As they made their way back toward the house, soaked and shivering but oddly exhilarated, Gabriel found himself wondering at the unexpected turn of events. He had come to dinner expecting careful conversation and perhaps the pressure of Trinity's challenge. Instead, he had glimpsed a life filled with precisely the authenticity and connection he had convinced himself were unattainable fantasies. Josephine met them at the back door with towels and knowing eyes that missed nothing of their disheveled state or the charged energy between them. "Plants saved?" she asked simply. Trinity nodded, accepting a towel gratefully. "Thanks to Gabriel's help. Sometimes what breaks lets in exactly what we need," Josephine observed cryptically, her gaze lingering on Gabriel with unsettling perception, "even when it arrives as shattered glass." Chapter 4. Forbidden flames. Gabriel stood in his pristine kitchen, staring at the potted herbs Trinity had given him the previous week, small transplants from her grandmother's garden now thriving on his windowsill, rosemary, basil, and lavender, each with handwritten care instructions in Trinity's elegant script. In his sterile penthouse, they seemed almost rebellious, introducing life and fragrance to a space designed for aesthetic minimalism. His phone chimed with a message from Trinity. "Dinner at my place tonight? I'm cooking. 7 p.m. Something warm unfurled in his chest at the simple invitation. Their relationship had evolved rapidly over the past 2 weeks. Shared lunches in the community garden, evening walks through the city's parks, conversations that stretched into the night. Yet he had not attempted his second chance, sensing that timing mattered as much as technique. "I'll bring dessert," he replied, already anticipating the evening ahead. Trinity's apartment was a third-floor walk-up, in a converted Victorian house, small but filled with character that reflected its owner. Books lined every available surface, dried herbs hung from kitchen rafters, and colourful textiles draped furniture that prioritized comfort over style. The scent of Creole spices perfumed the air as Gabriel followed Trinity into her modest kitchen. "Grandmother's gumbo recipe," she explained, stirring a pot whose contents simmered enticingly, with a few modifications of my own. Gabriel set down the bakery box containing chocolate soufflés, moving behind Trinity to inhale the aromatic steam rising from the pot. "It smells incredible." Trinity glanced over her shoulder, her proximity sending electricity across his skin. "Taste," she offered, lifting a wooden spoon to his lips. The flavors exploded across his palate, complex, perfectly balanced heat and richness that spoke of generations of culinary wisdom. "That's extraordinary," he murmured, acutely aware of Trinity's satisfied smile. "Food should be like love," she said, returning to her stirring. "Bold enough to be memorable, but never so overwhelming that you can't appreciate the subtle notes." Dinner was served at a small table nestled beside windows overlooking the city's twinkling lights. They ate slowly, conversation flowing easily. Between topics, Trinity's nursing rotation in the neonatal unit, Gabriel's new project incorporating community gardens into affordable housing developments, books they'd both read, music that moved them. "I have something to show you," Trinity said, when they'd finished their soufflés and moved to her small balcony with glasses of sweet dessert wine. She disappeared inside briefly, returning with a worn leather album. "My parents," she explained, settling beside Gabriel on the narrow bench. He watched her face as she opened the album, how her fingers traced photographs with reverent familiarity, how her expression shifted between melancholy and joy as she shared stories of the mother who taught her to identify healing plants and the father who read her poetry before bedtime. These weren't merely memories preserved in images, but living connections she maintained through ritual remembrance. "Do you have photos of your mother?" Trinity asked gently. Gabriel shook his head. "Nothing. The state took everything when they placed me in care. I have only fragments of memory. Her perfume, the sound of her singing when she thought I was asleep, how her hands looked playing piano keys." Trinity closed her album, setting it aside to take his hands in hers. "Tell me about those fragments. They matter." Something in her invitation, the genuine interest unmarred by pity, loosened. A knot Gabriel hadn't realized was still tightly bound within him. Words began to flow, memories he'd suppressed for decades, suddenly finding voice in the safety of Trinity's attention. He spoke of his mother's battle with addiction, moments of clarity interspersed with terrifying absences, how he'd learned to cook simple meals at age 5, the day officials came to take him away, while his mother screamed promises to get better. Trinity listened without interruption, her thumbs making gentle circles against his palms, tears occasionally slipping down her cheeks for the boy he'd been. When his words finally exhausted themselves, she raised his hand to her lips, placing a kiss against his knuckles that felt like benediction. "Thank you for trusting me with your story," she whispered. The intimacy of the moment, more profound than any physical connection, left Gabriel feeling simultaneously vulnerable and strengthened. In Trinity's eyes, he saw no judgment for his imperfect childhood or the emotional walls he'd built in response, only acceptance and something deeper he wasn't yet ready to name. A sudden breeze cooled the night air, causing Trinity to shiver slightly in her thin dress. Without hesitation, Gabriel slipped off his jacket and draped it around her shoulders, his hands lingering to adjust the collar. The gesture mirrored their first meeting, creating a circular symmetry that felt significant. "Is this your second chance?" Trinity asked, her voice teasing yet serious. Gabriel smiled, his fingers tracing the line where jacket met skin at her collarbone. "Not yet. This is just courtesy." Her laughter warmed the space between them. Such restraint from a man I once thought incapable of spontaneity. "You're teaching me patience," he admitted, watching how moonlight silvered the curves of her face. "Among other things." Trinity's expression grew serious as she studied him. "My brother Marcus is coming to town next week," she said, the apparent non sequitur catching Gabriel off guard. "He wants to meet you." "I'd like that," Gabriel replied automatically, though something in Trinity's tone suggested complication. "Marcus is protective," she explained, her fingers absently tracing patterns on the jacket's sleeve. "After our parents died, he appointed himself my guardian, even though grandmother was raising me. He has strong opinions about the people in my life." Gabriel nodded, understanding the unspoken warning. "Because of my background?" Trinity's soft laugh held no humor. "Actually, the opposite. Marcus believes wealthy people only get involved with those from our neighborhood out of novelty or charity. He's seen too many hearts broken when the novelty wears off." The implication stung more than Gabriel expected. "Is that what you believe?" "If I did, you wouldn't be here," Trinity answered simply, meeting his gaze directly. "But I understand his concerns. We come from different worlds, Gabriel. Pretending otherwise would be naive." The truth of her statement hung between them. The reality of their disparate backgrounds suddenly impossible to ignore. Gabriel thought of his corporate board meetings, the social obligations that filled his calendar, how few of his associates would understand his attraction to a nursing student from a modest neighborhood. "Different worlds can intersect," he offered finally, though the words sounded hollow even to his ears. Trinity's smile held wisdom beyond her years. "They can, but intersection isn't the same as integration." Before Gabriel could formulate a response, Trinity leaned forward, closing the distance between them with deliberate intent. Her lips brushed his with exquisite gentleness, a question rather than a demand. For one suspended moment, Gabriel remained perfectly still, processing the softness of her mouth, the faint taste of chocolate and wine, the scent of herbs that seemed to emanate from her very skin. Then something primal overrode his usual caution. His hands rose to cradle her face as he deepened the kiss, exploration becoming claiming as Trinity responded with equal fervor. What began as gentle quickly transformed into hungry need, months of isolation crumbling beneath the weight of newfound desire. Trinity shifted closer, her body fitting against his with perfect alignment as her fingers tangled in his hair. The small bench allowed no space for hesitation or distance, forcing a proximity that shattered remaining boundaries between them. When her lips parted beneath his, Gabriel tasted promise and possibility that made his head spin more effectively than any wine. Time lost meaning as they explored this new language between them, learning the particular sigh that indicated pleasure, the specific pressure that elicited response, the rhythm that built anticipation. Trinity's hands moved beneath his shirt, palms flat against the bare skin of his back, pulling him closer as though trying to eliminate any remaining space between their bodies. The sensation of her touch against his skin ignited something both urgent and overwhelming. Gabriel deepened the kiss further, one hand sliding down to Trinity's waist and then lower, tracing the curve of her hip with newfound boldness. When she gasped against his mouth, the sound sent blood rushing from his brain to more primitive centers of his body. With reluctance, born of respect rather than hesitation, Gabriel gradually gentled the kiss, creating enough space between them to think coherently. Trinity's eyes remained closed, her breathing uneven, lips slightly swollen from his attention. When she finally looked at him, the naked desire in her expression nearly undid his fragile restraint. "Stay tonight," she whispered. The invitation, unmistakable. Gabriel wanted nothing more than to accept, to follow this current of desire to its natural conclusion, to lose himself in the warmth and acceptance she offered so freely. Yet something held him back. Not fear this time, but recognition that rushing might jeopardize something precious just beginning to form between them. He pressed his forehead against hers, gathering strength to deny what they both clearly wanted. "Not tonight," he murmured, his voice rough with restraint. "Not because I don't want to, but because when we cross that threshold, I want nothing between us. No doubts, no reservations, no worlds to reconcile." Trinity studied his face, understanding gradually replacing disappointment in her expression. "Your restraint is unexpected," she observed, a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "And strangely compelling." Gabriel traced the curve of her cheek with gentle fingers. "Another lesson you're teaching me. Sometimes anticipation heightens eventual pleasure." Her laugh vibrated between them, intimate and conspiratorial. "Philosophy as defense against desire? Clever strategy, Mr. Laurent." Later, as Gabriel reluctantly prepared to leave, Trinity stood in her doorway, wrapped in his jacket once again, a visual reminder of how she had gradually claimed territory in his carefully constructed life. Before he could turn toward the stairs, she caught his hand. "Your second chance awaits whenever you're ready," she reminded him, her expression both challenge and promise. "But don't wait too long. Even patience has its limits." Gabriel nodded, understanding the gentle warning beneath her teasing tone. "Some things are worth careful consideration," he countered, raising her hand to place a kiss against her palm. "And some people deserve nothing less than absolute certainty." As he descended the stairs, Gabriel recognized that tonight marked a turning point, not just in their relationship, but in his understanding of himself. For the first time since childhood, he had chosen connection over self-protection, vulnerability over isolation. The realization was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating, like standing at the edge of an unexplored territory with only faith to guide his steps forward. Yet the memory of Trinity's kiss provided courage that had nothing to do with the artificial confidence he'd cultivated in boardrooms. Perhaps, he thought, as streetlights illuminated his path home, true confidence came not from absence of fear, but from finding something worth facing it for. Trinity's words echoed in his mind. Different worlds can intersect, but intersection isn't the same as integration. The upcoming meeting with Marcus would be their first real test, confronting the reality of their different backgrounds, rather than avoiding acknowledgement of potential complications. Gabriel resolved to face this challenge directly, rather than retreat to comfortable compartmentalization. If building a future with Trinity required bridging worlds that operated on fundamentally different principles, he would need to demonstrate commitment beyond passionate kisses and shared vulnerability. As he drove home through quiet streets, Gabriel began mentally preparing for Marcus's evaluation, not with strategic calculation, but with honest recognition that Trinity's brother had legitimate reason for skepticism. Proving himself worthy of her trust would require more than charm or financial resources. It would demand genuine engagement with concerns about their different worlds and honest acknowledgement of challenges ahead. For the first time in his adult life, Gabriel found himself prioritizing relationship navigation over professional achievement, a shift in values that felt simultaneously disorienting and absolutely right. Trinity had awakened something in him that transcended physical attraction or intellectual compatibility, a hunger for authentic connection that no amount of success could satisfy. The prospect of meeting Marcus, of being judged not as successful CEO, but as man involved with beloved sister, created unfamiliar anxiety. Yet Gabriel welcomed this discomfort as evidence of meaningful investment. Some things worth having required risking disapproval or rejection. Trinity had become precisely such a priority, worth whatever challenges their different backgrounds might present. Chapter 5. Healing Touch. The meeting with Marcus had gone precisely as badly as Gabriel had anticipated. Trinity's brother, a successful civil rights attorney with penetrating eyes that missed nothing, had spent the entire dinner subjecting Gabriel to what felt like a cross-examination disguised as casual conversation. Every question probed for weakness, testing Gabriel's intentions and commitment with the precision of a surgeon seeking diseased tissue. "My sister sees the best in everyone," Marcus had said during their brief moment alone, his voice controlled, but edged with warning. "It's both her greatest strength and her vulnerability. If this is some philanthropic experiment or midlife crisis for you, end it now before she invests more of herself." Gabriel had maintained his composure, understanding the protective instinct behind the hostility. "I care for Trinity," he'd replied simply. "More than I've cared for anyone in a very long time." Marcus had studied him with skepticism born of experience. Rich men always believe their intentions are pure. History suggests otherwise. 3 days had passed since that uncomfortable dinner, days filled with unanswered texts and calls that went to voicemail. Gabriel stood now outside the hospital where Trinity worked, uncertainty warring with concern. Her silence was unprecedented. In their evolving relationship, the emergency room bustled with controlled chaos, harried staff moving between curtained areas with purposeful efficiency. Gabriel approached the nurses' station, inquiring about Trinity with growing apprehension. "Rhodes! She called in sick 3 days ago," offered a nurse with kind eyes and a worried expression. "Flu's been hitting staff hard. Several nurses are out." Relief mingled with renewed concern as Gabriel thanked her and headed toward Trinity's apartment. The late October air carried a biting chill that penetrated his wool coat, fallen leaves swirling at his feet as he quickened his pace. When Trinity finally answered his persistent knocking, the sight of her sent alarm coursing through him. Her usually vibrant complexion had dulled to ashen, dark circles shadowing eyes bright with fever. She swayed slightly, gripping the doorframe for support. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured, voice raspy and weak. "I don't want you getting sick." Gabriel moved forward without hesitation, one arm circling her waist to support her trembling frame. "Have you seen a doctor?" he asked, helping her. Back toward the couch, where a tangled nest of blankets suggested she'd been resting, Trinity shook her head, then winced at the apparent pain the movement caused. "Just the flu. Been taking care of myself." A quick assessment of her apartment told a different story. Empty water glasses, untouched food, medication bottles with childproof caps she'd likely been too weak to open. Gabriel pressed his palm to her forehead, alarmed at the heat radiating from her skin. "You're burning up," he observed, decision crystallizing immediately. "Have you taken anything for the fever?" "Couldn't open the bottle," Trinity admitted, a testament to how ill she must be to acknowledge such vulnerability. Gabriel found her thermometer, confirming his suspicion, 103.2 degrees. "Too high to ignore." "You need medicine and fluids," he said, his tone allowing no argument as he filled a glass with water and successfully battled the childproof cap. Trinity swallowed the medication obediently, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. "I'll be fine," she insisted weakly. "Just need rest." "When did you last eat?" Gabriel asked, already moving toward her small kitchen to investigate options. "Yesterday? Maybe?" Trinity's uncertainty increased his concern. Gabriel spent the next hour preparing simple broth, coaxing Trinity to swallow small spoonfuls between sips of water and electrolyte drink. Her compliance spoke volumes about how truly ill she felt. This woman, who typically tackled challenges with fierce independence, now allowing him to wipe her forehead with cool cloths and adjust pillows beneath her head. "You should go," she murmured, as afternoon shadows lengthened across her apartment floor. "I don't want to infect you." Gabriel shook his head, settling into an armchair he'd pulled beside her makeshift sickbed. "I rarely get sick," he responded. The decision already made. And you shouldn't be alone with a fever this high. Trinity's eyes, glassy with fever, studied him with peculiar intensity. Marcus would say, "You're trying to make me indebted to you." The accusation stung, though Gabriel recognized it came from delirium rather than genuine belief. "Marcus doesn't know me," he replied simply. "And right now that's irrelevant. Sleep, Trinity. I'll be here when you wake." Whether from exhaustion or acceptance, Trinity stopped arguing, her eyes drifting closed as medication began to ease her symptoms. Gabriel maintained his vigil as evening descended, monitoring her breathing and periodically checking her temperature. When her fever spiked again near midnight, fear propelled him into action. He gathered her into his arms, wrapped in blankets, and carried her to his car. Trinity stirred only briefly, her head lolling against his shoulder with concerning limpness. The emergency room staff responded quickly to her symptoms, a doctor soon confirming pneumonia rather than influenza. "She'll need IV antibiotics and close monitoring," he explained to Gabriel. "You did the right thing bringing her in. Much longer with that fever, and things could have gotten dangerous." Gabriel remained at Trinity's side throughout the night. As antibiotics dripped steadily into her veins and oxygen supplemented her labored breathing, he watched the monitors with vigilant attention, alert to every change in her vital signs, every subtle shift in her restless sleep. Near dawn, Trinity's fever finally broke, consciousness returning with gradual clarity. She blinked up at Gabriel, with confusion that slowly transformed into understanding. "You're still here," she whispered, her voice raspy but stronger. Gabriel leaned forward, relief evident in his expression. "Of course I am." Trinity's fingers weakly sought his, her usual strength temporarily diminished but determination intact. "Thank you." 2 days later, Trinity was released with prescriptions and strict instructions for recovery. When Gabriel suggested she recuperate at his penthouse, he expected argument, prepared counters to her inevitable protests about independence and imposition. Instead, Trinity surprised him with quiet acceptance. "Grandmother's visiting my aunt in Louisiana," she explained. "I shouldn't be alone until the antibiotics take full effect." Gabriel's penthouse, with its sweeping city views and minimalist aesthetic, had never felt like a true home until Trinity's presence transformed it. He installed her in his guest room, converting the space with additions that spoke of careful attention, extra pillows for comfortable sitting, books from her apartment, flowers on the nightstand, and herbs from his kitchen windowsill arranged. Where their scent could reach her, days settled into unexpected domesticity as Trinity slowly regained strength. Gabriel worked from home, conducting video conferences from his office while preparing nourishing meals and ensuring medications were taken on schedule. Evenings found them sharing quiet conversations, Trinity's insights penetrating the professional armor Gabriel had maintained for so long. "You've never asked about my father," Trinity observed one evening as they sat in comfortable companionship, her frame wrapped in one of Gabriel's sweaters that dwarfed her recovering body. Gabriel glanced up from the architectural journal he'd been reading. "You've never mentioned him." Trinity nodded, fingers tracing abstract patterns on the arm of her chair. "He left when I was 3, couldn't handle the responsibility of family. My mother never spoke badly of him, just said some people aren't meant for roots." The quiet revelation answered questions Gabriel hadn't asked but had wondered about. "Do you know where he is now?" "California, last I heard. New family, new life." Trinity's tone held no bitterness, only statement of fact. "I used to think it was something about me, that I wasn't enough reason to stay." Took years to understand his leaving, reflected his limitations, not my value. Gabriel absorbed this glimpse into the foundational experiences that had shaped Trinity's remarkable self-possession. "Is that why you created your 3 chances test?" he asked, intuiting connection. "To ensure whoever stays is capable of real commitment." Trinity's smile held appreciation for his perception. Partly. But it's more about recognizing someone who isn't afraid of genuine connection. Her eyes held his steadily. Confident touch suggests confident presence in other aspects of relationship. I wanted to know if you could overcome your instinct to maintain distance. The honesty between them, this exchange of vulnerabilities without strategy or manipulation, felt revolutionary to Gabriel. In his previous relationships, carefully constructed personas had interfaced rather than authentic selves truly connecting. As Trinidad continued recovering, Gabriel found himself sharing progressively deeper truths about foster homes where displays of emotion were punished, boarding schools where he learned to project confidence he didn't feel, relationships terminated when intimacy threatened his carefully constructed independence. "You've built a successful life," Trinity observed one afternoon as she examined photographs of his architectural projects. But success isn't the same as fulfillment. The simple statement illuminated a distinction Gabriel had deliberately avoided acknowledging. "Architecture allows me to create beauty without risking rejection," he admitted. "Buildings don't leave or betray confidence." Trinity set aside the portfolio, moving to sit beside him on the sofa. "People are messier than blueprints," she agreed. "But they're also capable of returning love in ways concrete and glass never can." The word love hung between them, unnamed until this moment, yet increasingly undeniable in its presence. Gabriel studied Trinity's face, noting how health had returned color to her cheeks, vitality to her expressions. Something profound shifted within him as he recognized how desperately he'd feared losing her during those feverish nights. How empty his carefully designed life would be without her disruptive presence. "When I was most ill," Trinity said softly, "I remember moments of consciousness where I felt your hand holding mine. It anchored me when fever dreams threatened to carry me away." Gabriel nodded, remembering those endless hours of maintaining physical connection, as though his touch could somehow tether her to recovery. "I needed you to know you weren't alone." Trinity's gaze softened with understanding. "You've been alone too long, Gabriel." The truth of her observation resonated painfully. Gabriel reached toward her, his hand covering hers where it rested between them. This touch contained no hesitation, no uncertainty, only genuine connection. "Is this my second chance?" he asked quietly. Trinity smiled, turning her hand to intertwine their fingers more completely. "Not quite yet. This is gratitude and growing affection, beautiful but not what I'm waiting for." Gabriel understood with sudden clarity what she sought, not merely physical contact, but the touch of someone who had fully embraced vulnerability, who reached for connection without reservation or fear. Despite their growing intimacy, something within him still maintained careful control, measuring risk against reward. Later that evening, as they shared dinner on his balcony beneath star-scattered skies, Trinity suddenly placed her hand over her heart, her expression serious beneath moonlight. "Feel this," she said, taking Gabriel's hand and placing it against her chest. Beneath his palm, her heartbeat pulsed with steady rhythm, vital and strong. "This is where you belong, Gabriel Laurent. Not hovering at the periphery of connection, not calculating safe distance, but here, fully present to whatever joy or pain that entails." The gesture, so simple yet profoundly intimate, broke something open within Gabriel's chest. Tears gathered unexpectedly in his eyes as decades of carefully maintained distance crumbled beneath the weight of Trinity's unflinching invitation. "I don't know if I can be what you need," he confessed, voice rough with emotion. "I've spent my life building walls rather than bridges." Trinity covered his hand with her own, keeping it pressed against her heart. "Everyone knows how to connect, Gabriel. Some just need permission to remember." Her words offered absolution for his hesitation, understanding for his fear and, most surprisingly, hope that transformation remained possible even after years of emotional isolation. "When you're ready for your second chance," she murmured, "you'll know, and so will I." Chapter 6. Dance of Souls. "I'm taking you somewhere special this weekend," Gabriel announced as they walked through the community garden where their story had begun. 2 weeks had passed since Trinity's recovery, her strength fully restored, along with the vibrant energy that had first captivated him. Trinity raised an eyebrow, curiosity evident in her expression. "Care to elaborate?" "It's a surprise," Gabriel replied, enjoying the rare opportunity to intrigue rather than be intrigued. "Pack for 2 nights. Dress comfortably." Friday afternoon found them driving along the coastline, windows down to capture salt-tinged breezes. When they finally turned onto a private drive winding through coastal forest, Trinity fell silent, eyes widening as dense trees gave way to reveal a modern glass house perched on rocky cliffs above the ocean. "Gabriel, this is breathtaking," Trinity whispered as he parked beneath a sheltering overhang. "Whose home is this?" "Mine," he answered simply. "I designed it after my uncle died, but I rarely visit. It felt too indulgent for one person." The interior proved as stunning as the exterior. Open spaces designed to frame ocean views, natural materials providing warmth against the cool color palette. Yet despite its architectural perfection, the space carried a subtle emptiness, the absence of personal touches that transform houses into homes. Trinity explored with appreciative curiosity, trailing fingers across stone countertops and pausing to admire how sunset light filtered through strategically placed windows. "You designed this to capture every mood of the ocean," she observed. "It's intimate despite its size." Gabriel watched her move through the space, struck by how her presence immediately altered its energy, bringing vitality to rooms that had existed primarily as aesthetic achievements rather than lived experiences. Before dinner, Gabriel presented Trinity with a simple white dress of flowing organic cotton. Its elegant simplicity suited her perfectly, neither overly formal nor casual, but designed for movement and grace. When Trinity emerged onto the candle-lit terrace, Gabriel momentarily lost capacity for speech. The dress complemented her dark skin exquisitely, its draping fabric moving like water with each step. She'd released her braids, allowing natural coils to frame her face in a halo that caught golden light from strategically placed lanterns. Dinner progressed with intimate conversation that flowed as naturally as the wine filling their glasses. Gabriel had arranged for local seafood, prepared simply but perfectly, allowing ocean flavors to speak for themselves. After dinner, Gabriel opened doors to the lower terrace, where wooden decking extended toward cliff's edge. The night had turned perfect, stars scattered across velvet darkness, waves providing rhythmic soundtrack, gentle breeze carrying ocean essence without uncomfortable chill. Gabriel approached the small sound system concealed within terrace furnishings, selecting music before turning to Trinity with extended hand. "Dance with me?" Surprise flashed briefly across her features before pleasure replaced it. "I didn't imagine you as a dancer." Their initial movements contained hesitation, the careful negotiation of new physical dialogue. Gabriel maintained traditional form, his posture reflecting years of obligatory dance lessons that emphasized technique rather than connection. Trinity followed his lead momentarily before pulling back slightly. "This isn't dancing," she challenged gently. "This is performing dance steps. There's a difference." She kicked off her sandals, encouraging him to remove his shoes as well. "Feel the wood beneath your feet," she instructed, guiding him away from formal positioning to more natural proximity. "Listen to what's beneath the music." Gabriel attempted to follow her guidance, gradually surrendering practiced movements for authentic response to rhythm. Their bare feet moved across wooden planks, warmed by day's sunshine, creating connection to earth despite their elevation above. Crashing waves. "Stop counting beats in your head," Trinity murmured, intuiting his internal process. "Dance isn't mathematics. It's conversation without words." As one song transitioned to another, slower, more sensual in its arrangement, Trinity moved closer, eliminating formal space between them. Her cheek rested against Gabriel's chest, her curves fitting perfectly against his frame as they swayed to saxophone melodies that seemed to voice unspoken desires. "Dancing is surrender," Trinity whispered, her breath warm against his neck. "Allowing another person to guide your movement requires trust. Following your partner's lead demands confidence in your own body." Gabriel's hand spread across the small of her back, feeling heat radiate through thin cotton as their movements synchronized perfectly. This dance contained nothing of performance, only genuine communion between bodies learning each other's rhythms. "My mother taught me to dance," Trinity continued, her voice carrying memories. "She said you can tell everything about potential lovers by how they move together before intimacy. Bodies reveal what words conceal." The implication sent heat coursing through Gabriel's veins. "And what does our dancing reveal?" he asked, voice lower than intended. Trinity pulled back slightly, meeting his gaze with characteristic directness. "That you're learning to trust your instincts rather than your training. That your body knows what your mind still questions." Their movement slowed, the space between them charged with awareness that had nothing to do with music and everything to do with recognition of inevitable trajectory between them. When Gabriel's hand moved from Trinity's waist to cradle her cheek, neither pretended the gesture was part of their dance. "Trinity," he whispered, her name itself becoming question and answer simultaneously. Her response came without words, rising onto tiptoes as her arms circled his neck, bringing their lips together with deliberate intent. Unlike their previous kisses, this carried nothing of restraint or uncertainty. Their mouths met with mutual hunger, acknowledging desire too long contained by caution. Gabriel lifted Trinity easily, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her toward the outdoor lounging area without breaking their kiss. Lowering her onto cushioned furnishings, he followed to cover her body with his own, their movement now creating different rhythm altogether. Trinity's hands moved beneath Gabriel's shirt, exploring contours of muscle with appreciative touch that left fire in its wake. His own fingers traced the neckline of her dress, following fabric's edge along collarbone to where it draped across the swell of her breasts. "Is this my second chance?" he murmured against the curve of her neck, where his lips had been creating patterns of their own. Trinity's laugh vibrated against his mouth, sensual rather than amused. "Not yet," she replied, fingers tangling in his hair to guide his mouth back to hers. "This is still dress rehearsal." As midnight approached, cooling air finally penetrated their heated exchange. Gabriel reluctantly pulled away, gazing down at Trinity's flushed features with mixture of desire and tenderness. "We should go inside," he suggested, voice rough with restraint. That night, they slept in the same bed without consummating their desire, bodies entwined in promise rather than fulfillment. Gabriel's arms encircled Trinity protectively, her head tucked beneath his chin as ocean sounds penetrated glass barriers to serenade their shared dreams. For the first time in his adult life, Gabriel fell asleep without calculating responsibilities, awaiting tomorrow, fully present in momentary perfection rather than anticipating future challenges. Trinity's rhythmic breathing against his chest created counterpoint to waves crashing below, both sounds merging into lullaby that spoke of possibilities he'd never allowed himself to imagine. Chapter 7. Storm clouds, the weeks following their coastal Weekend transformed Gabriel's carefully structured life into something unrecognizable. Trinity's presence permeated spaces previously defined by aesthetic minimalism, colorful scarves draped across furniture, herbal bundles hanging in his kitchen, books stacked on previously empty surfaces. On this particular evening, Gabriel navigated Trinity's small kitchen, preparing dinner while she completed a late hospital shift. Tonight's menu, Creole-inspired fish with her favorite spices, represented his increasing confidence in territory previously unexplored. When Trinity arrived, Gabriel turned expectantly, smile fading as he registered her expression, tension evident in tightened jaw and shadowed eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. "Derek showed up at the hospital today," she replied, dropping her bag with exhaustion evident in slumped shoulders. The name registered vaguely in Gabriel's memory. A former boyfriend Trinity had mentioned, briefly. What did he want? Trinity moved to the window, staring out at gathering dusk. He threatened to contact the midwifery program I've applied to share information that could damage my application. Protective anger flared instantly in Gabriel's chest. What information? 3 years ago, I treated a neighbor's child for fever, using traditional remedies from my grandmother. The child improved, but Derek, who was in medical school, reported me for practicing medicine without a license. Understanding dawned immediately, and that report could prevent your acceptance to the midwifery program. Gabriel processed this information with strategic precision. We can handle this. I have contacts with the hospital board. No, Trinity interrupted sharply. This isn't a problem you can solve with influence or money. That approach would only validate Derek's claim that I'm using our relationship for advancement. The rejection stung more than Gabriel expected. I'm only trying to help. I know, Trinity acknowledged, her expression softening. But this is my challenge to overcome. Marcus warned me about this, about how your world solves problems with resources and connections, while people from my background develop different coping mechanisms. The mention of her brother created additional tension. Marcus had made his skepticism about their relationship abundantly clear during their meeting 2 weeks earlier, warning both Trinity and Gabriel that their different worlds would eventually create irreconcilable conflicts. Before either could navigate this unexpected discord, Gabriel's phone rang with his assistant's emergency tone. After listening briefly, he explained, "My father has apparently appeared at the office, demanding to see me." Trinity's eyes widened with surprise. "Your father? You said you never knew him." "I didn't," Gabriel confirmed, already gathering his jacket, "which makes his sudden appearance concerning." Trinity immediately set aside their previous tension. "Do you want me to come with you?" Gabriel shook his head. "This is something I need to handle alone, following your philosophy about personal challenges." Henry Laurent proved exactly as Gabriel's assistant had described, disheveled, intoxicated, and belligerent. Up close, Gabriel could see hints of his own features reflected in this stranger's face. Same jawline, similar height, eyes matching his own unusual hazel shade. Once alone in a conference room, Henry's performance dropped. Calculation replacing. Feigned emotion. "I want what any father deserves, recognition and perhaps modest compensation for contributing to your genetic success. You abandoned my mother before I was born. You have no claim to anything in my life," Gabriel replied coldly. "Your mother understood our arrangement was temporary," Henry countered smoothly. "Not my fault she developed inconvenient expectations." Something cold and precise crystallized within Gabriel's chest. "My mother died alone, struggling with addiction while trying to raise me without support. Whatever arrangement you had clearly didn't include basic human decency." Henry's expression hardened. "I've followed your career for years, watched you build your empire while I struggled. Same blood flows through our veins, yet fate distributed opportunity unfairly." "Not fate," Gabriel corrected calmly. Choices. You chose abandonment. I chose discipline and hard work, despite having every excuse to fail. The conversation deteriorated from there, Henry alternating between thinly veiled threats and attempts at emotional manipulation. Gabriel maintained composed detachment, finally arranging for security to escort his father from the building. Watching the elevator doors close on the stranger who shared his DNA, Gabriel experienced unexpected emotional turbulence. His father's appearance represented more than unwelcome intrusion. It triggered fundamental questions about inheritance beyond genetics. Was his own carefully constructed independence truly choice or biological predisposition? Trinity opened her door before he could knock, concern evident in her expression. What happened? As they settled on her small sofa, Gabriel described the encounter in careful detail, surprising himself with emotional honesty typically kept tightly controlled. He wanted money? She asked when Gabriel finished, disbelief coloring her tone. He wanted transaction, Gabriel clarified. Connection without commitment, benefit without responsibility, precisely the pattern Marcus accused me of perpetuating. With you, Trinity's expression registered surprise at this connection. That's not fair. You've shown consistent commitment despite our different backgrounds. Have I? Gabriel questioned, newfound vulnerability allowing deeper honesty. Or have I created controlled environment for connection that minimizes risk? Precisely my father's approach to relationships? Trinity shifted closer, her hand rising, to cradle Gabriel's face. You are nothing like the man you described. Your father abandoned responsibility. You've built your life around fulfilling it. He seeks transaction. You've demonstrated genuine care despite your discomfort with vulnerability. Their conversation continued late into night. Honest exchange about childhood wounds creating bridge. Across earlier tension, Trinity revealed more about her father's repeated promises and eventual permanent departure when she was 12, pattern that had shaped both her and Marcus's approach to relationships. Marcus protects through skepticism, she explained. I protect through independence. We both fear abandonment but express it differently. Gabriel nodded, recognizing parallel to his own pattern. And I protect through compartmentalization, keeping different aspects of life separate to limit vulnerability in any single area. As midnight approached, Trinity traced gentle patterns across Gabriel's chest where his heartbeat steadied beneath her touch. I'm sorry about earlier, she offered softly. Your instinct to protect me is beautiful, even when it conflicts with my need for independence. Gabriel caught her hand, pressing it more firmly against his heart. And I'm sorry for attempting to solve your problem rather than simply supporting your approach. Old habits resurface under stress. Trinity looked directly into his eyes. We come from different worlds, Gabriel. Those differences will create challenges we can't always anticipate. The truth of her statement resonated uncomfortably. Despite growing intimacy, fundamental differences remained, in experience, in resources, in approaches to life's obstacles. What happens when Derek follows through on his threat? He asked. What happens when Marcus's skepticism creates further tension? Are these differences eventually insurmountable? Trinity considered his questions thoughtfully. Every relationship faces obstacles. What matters isn't avoiding challenges, but choosing to face them together, rather than retreat to safer emotional territory. She paused, fingers gently combing through his hair. Derek represents my past, control disguised as concern. Your father represents similar pattern from different socio-economic position. Both remind us what we're choosing against as much as what we're choosing toward. Morning brought professional urgency that postponed further personal conversation. Their goodbye kiss carried unusual weight, both sensing unresolved undercurrents beneath apparent reconciliation. Throughout the day, Gabriel found concentration elusive, as his mind repeatedly returned to fundamental questions raised by previous evening's events. By afternoon, clarity slowly emerged, recognition that his relationship with Trinity required greater courage than any professional challenge he'd ever faced. As evening approached, Gabriel found himself drawn back to the community garden where their story had begun. Sitting on the stone bench beneath the willow tree where Trinity had first truly seen him, Gabriel reached a decision that felt simultaneously terrifying and inevitable. His phone chimed with Trinity's message, accompanied by photo showing official letter, "Program acceptance came today despite Derek's interference. My qualifications outweighed his accusations. Can we talk tonight?" Gabriel responded immediately, "Meet me at our garden." The willow tree. When Trinity arrived, triumph from her professional validation still illuminating her expression, Gabriel recognized what truly mattered amid theoretical concerns about different worlds. "Congratulations," he said simply, genuine pride evident in his voice as he embraced her. "You earned this through merit rather than manipulation." Taking Trinity's hands between his, he gathered courage for complete honesty. "Yesterday made me recognize something I've been avoiding acknowledging. We come from fundamentally different worlds. Those differences create obstacles that require tremendous courage to overcome." Trinity's expression fell, her hands stiffening within his grasp. "Are you ending this between us?" "Just the opposite," Gabriel responded with sudden clarity. "I'm acknowledging that loving you is the most terrifying and beautiful experience of my life, precisely because it demands courage I've never needed before." Relief transformed Trinity's expression, tension yielding to cautious hope. "Meeting my father showed me what happens when connection is viewed as transaction rather than genuine engagement. I've spent years unconsciously following his example, maintaining independence as protection against vulnerability. You've challenged that pattern from our first meeting." "And challenged is uncomfortable," Trinity observed softly. "Tremendously," Gabriel agreed with unexpected smile. "Yet also essential for growth. You've helped me recognize that safety and fulfillment rarely coexist, that meaningful connection requires risking disappointment and rejection." Walking toward the garden exit hand in hand, Gabriel remembered Trinity's original challenge. 3 chances to touch her with confidence that would determine their relationship's potential. 2 chances remained unused, yet something more significant had developed between them. Mutual understanding that transcended physical connection to touch deeper emotional reality. "Your father and Derek could have driven us apart," Trinity observed, as streetlights illuminated their path home. "Instead, they've clarified what matters most." Gabriel nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "The storm reveals what's built on solid foundation and what requires reinforcement." Neither spoke the word love aloud that evening, yet its presence surrounded them as surely as the night air carrying scents of earth and growing things from the garden behind them. Something essential had shifted between them. Fear acknowledged rather than denied, differences recognized rather than ignored. Chapter 8. Fractured Faith. The invitation arrived on heavy cream stationery with embossed letterhead, Laurent Architectural. Innovation's annual gala celebrating the firm's achievements and honoring significant clients. As CEO and creative director, Gabriel's attendance wasn't optional, but obligatory. The unexpected complication came in Trinity's schedule. Her midwifery program had unexpectedly shifted clinical rotations, freeing the evening Gabriel had assumed she would be unavailable. "I can attend after all," she announced, excitement evident, as she handed him freshly revised rotation schedules. "My hospital shift was switched to next weekend." Gabriel's hesitation lasted only seconds, but Trinity's perceptiveness caught it immediately. "Unless you'd prefer I not come," she questioned, confusion replacing enthusiasm. Of course I want you there, Gabriel responded quickly, though something in his tone lacked complete conviction. I just hadn't prepared anyone for your attendance. Trinity studied him with the directness that had characterized their relationship from its beginning. Are you uncomfortable introducing me to your professional circle? The question hung between them, its implication creating sudden tension where easy companionship had existed moments before. Gabriel chose his words carefully, aware of potential misinterpretation. These events are tedious obligations, business relationships masquerading as social occasions. I wouldn't subject someone I care about to such artifice unnecessarily. Trinity's expression remained skeptical. That explanation sounds suspiciously diplomatic, Gabriel. Are you embarrassed by my background compared to your colleagues' partners? Absolutely not, Gabriel responded immediately, genuine shock at her suggestion evident in his tone. Your intelligence and accomplishments would impress anyone worth impressing. Then what? Trinity pressed. Unwilling to accept evasion she would have overlooked earlier in their relationship. Gabriel sighed, recognizing her determination to understand his hesitation. My professional world operates on carefully maintained perceptions. Personal relationships become gossip fodder and potential leverage in business negotiations. I've always kept my private life completely separate from corporate obligations. Trinity absorbed this explanation, her expression gradually softening. I understand maintaining boundaries between personal and professional spheres, but there's difference between privacy and compartmentalization. The distinction resonated uncomfortably. Gabriel recognized truth in her observation. His hesitation reflected not merely professional boundaries, but deeper pattern of keeping life's various aspects carefully separated. Trinity represented integration rather than division, authentic presence that didn't shift between contexts. You're right, he acknowledged finally. I'd be honored to have you attend. We'll need to find appropriate formal wear on short notice. Trinity's smile returned, though slightly reserved compared to her initial enthusiasm. Fortunately, I happen to know an excellent seamstress. Grandmother's neighbor Mrs. Chen can alter one of my mother's dresses perfectly in time. The matter appeared. Settled yet subtle undercurrent remained as they continued their evening. Trinity's momentary doubt regarding her place in Gabriel's life had introduced question neither could completely dismiss, despite surface reconciliation. The night of the gala arrived with crystalline autumn skies and unseasonable warmth that suggested summer's reluctance to surrender completely to advancing seasons. Gabriel waited in Trinity's small living room, adjusting his custom tuxedo's cuffs with unconscious precision that reflected underlying tension. When Trinity emerged from her bedroom, Gabriel's breath caught audibly. She wore a gown of deep burgundy silk that complemented her rich complexion perfectly, its vintage styling referencing 1950s elegance while remaining timelessly appropriate. Delicate beadwork across the bodice caught light with subtle brilliance, suggesting stars against evening sky rather than ostentatious display. You look absolutely stunning, Gabriel managed finally, genuine appreciation replacing nervous anticipation. Trinity smiled, performing a slow turn that revealed the gown's dramatic back, architectural in its structured simplicity. This was my mother's. She wore it to receive a community service award the year before she died. Her fingers traced beadwork with reverent familiarity. Mrs. Chen adjusted the fit, but preserved every original detail. The dress represented more than mere formal attire. It embodied connection to heritage. Trinity maintained with characteristic intentionality. Gabriel recognized significant trust in her willingness to wear something so personally meaningful to an event where she might feel fundamentally out of place. It honors both your mother and you perfectly, he said softly, offering his arm with formal gesture that acknowledged evening's significance. The gala venue, a renovated historical building whose restoration Gabriel's firm had overseen, glittered with carefully orchestrated elegance. Crystal chandeliers illuminated architectural details, preserved through painstaking craftsmanship, while floral arrangements complemented rather than competed with the space's inherent beauty. As they entered the grand ballroom, Gabriel felt Trinity's arm tense slightly within his grasp. Though her expression remained composed, he sensed her momentary overwhelm at the assembled crowd, city's business elite mingling with political figures and social luminaries in practiced choreography of influence and connection. "Impressive restoration," Trinity observed, her gaze traveling appreciatively across architectural details Gabriel knew she recognized from conversations about the building's history. Her focus on professional elements rather than social intimidation reflected characteristic resilience that had first drawn him to her. Before Gabriel could respond, his attention was claimed by the firm's marketing director, approaching with determined smile. "Gabriel, finally! The Richardsons have been asking, for you specifically, something about their Shanghai project modifications." What followed set pattern for the evening. Constant interruptions from colleagues, clients, and business associates requiring Gabriel's attention for matters positioned as urgent despite their routine nature. Trinity remained graciously at his side initially, engaging politely when directly addressed, but finding herself increasingly peripheral to conversations dominated by industry jargon and references to projects unfamiliar to outsiders. Gabriel found himself torn between professional obligations and personal concern, watching Trinity become progressively isolated despite physical proximity. When he introduced her to colleagues, he noticed himself emphasizing her nursing background rather than midwifery studies or traditional healing knowledge, unconsciously selecting aspects of her identity most easily integrated into conventional success narratives. The pattern hadn't escaped Trinity's notice. During momentary respite between conversations, she touched his arm gently. "I'm going to explore the building's architecture more closely," she said quietly. "You focus on your clients without worrying about entertaining me." Before Gabriel could protest, she slipped away with graceful determination that prevented public disagreement. He watched her move through the crowd, her burgundy gown distinctive amid predominantly black formal wear, aware that he should follow yet constrained by approaching board members whose support remained crucial to pending projects. The evening progressed with increasing discomfort as Gabriel divided attention between professional obligations and periodic visual checks, confirming Trinity's continued presence in the ballroom. She appeared to have found momentary companionship with the event's floral designer, an older woman whose animated gestures suggested genuine conversation rather than polite small talk. Gabriel's distraction didn't go unnoticed by his assistant, James, who approached during a rare quiet moment. "Your guest seems lovely," he observed neutrally. Unusual not to have introduced her to the executive team. The comment, delivered without obvious judgment, nevertheless highlighted Gabriel's unconscious decision to keep Trinity separate from his closest professional circles. He had introduced her to clients and peripheral associates, but avoided formal presentations to colleagues with whom he maintained more significant relationships. "An oversight, I should correct," Gabriel acknowledged, discomfort growing as he recognized pattern he'd unconsciously established throughout the evening. Before he could address this realization, the firm's largest client commandeered his attention. With questions about upcoming project phases that required detailed technical explanation, by the time this conversation concluded, Gabriel turned to find Trinity no longer visible within the crowded ballroom. Concern accelerated to alarm as minutes passed without locating her among gathered guests. Gabriel finally found James, who directed him toward the building's restored rooftop garden. Apparently, Trinity had mentioned interest in seeing the space's sustainable design elements. The rooftop offered dramatic contrast to the formal event. Below, quiet darkness interrupted only by strategic lighting, highlighting architectural features and botanical specimens. Gabriel found Trinity alone, at the garden's edge, her silhouette outlined against city lights spreading beneath them like earthbound constellations. "There you are," he said with evident relief, approaching cautiously as he registered tension in her posture. "I've been looking for you." Trinity turned, moonlight revealing trails of tears on her cheeks that she made no attempt to hide. "Have you? It seemed you were quite occupied with people far more important than me." The bitterness in her tone startled Gabriel. "That's not fair. You know these events require certain obligations." "What's not fair?" Trinity interrupted. Her voice quiet but intense, is being treated like an accessory rather than a partner. "You've introduced me to strangers all evening, without once acknowledging what I am to you." Gabriel stepped closer, reaching for her hand only to have her withdraw it deliberately. "These are business relationships, Trinity. Personal connections aren't relevant in this context, except everyone else's partners were acknowledged appropriately," she countered. "I watched you introduce the board chairman's wife with more warmth than you showed me. I heard your marketing director's husband described as brilliant physician, while I was merely Trinity, a nurse." Her observation struck uncomfortably close to truth Gabriel had been avoiding. Throughout the evening, he had unconsciously minimized their relationship, presenting Trinity as casual acquaintance rather than the woman who had transformed his emotional landscape. "I've always kept my personal life separate from business," he explained, awareness of inadequate justification growing, even as words left his mouth. Trinity's laugh held no humor. "Is that what you tell yourself? Because from where I stand, it looks remarkably like shame." The accusation landed with devastating precision. "That's absurd. I'm not ashamed of you." "Perhaps not consciously," Trinity acknowledged, her perceptiveness cutting through his defenses. "But actions reveal truth more reliably than intentions, Gabriel. Tonight, you've carefully kept me separate from anyone whose opinion matters to you professionally." The message was unmistakable. Gabriel struggled against immediate defensive response, forcing himself to consider her perspective. Had he unconsciously created separation between Trinity and his professional world? The uncomfortable answer proved impossible to deny completely. "If I've kept boundaries between worlds, it's from habit rather than shame," he offered finally. "My professional identity has always existed separately from personal relationships." "That distinction worked before us," Trinity replied, her tone softening slightly, though hurt remained evident. "But relationships require integration, not compartmentalization. I need a partner willing to acknowledge me in all contexts, not just private spaces where no one important is watching." The fundamental truth of her statement resonated painfully. Gabriel recognized pattern extending beyond tonight's event. His careful separation of life's various aspects, reflecting deeper fear of vulnerability if worlds collided. "I'm sorry," he said simply, understanding inadequacy of words against evening's accumulated slights. "You deserve better recognition of your importance in my life." Trinity studied him with the directness that had characterized their relationship from its beginning. "I don't need grand gestures, Gabriel. I need authentic presence, confidence in us that doesn't change depending on audience." Before Gabriel could respond, his assistant appeared at the rooftop entrance. "Gabriel, sorry to interrupt, but the mayor's speech begins in 5 minutes. Your introduction is expected." Professional obligation created immediate conflict with personal priority, a microcosm of larger pattern Trinity had identified. Gabriel hesitated only briefly before making a decision that felt simultaneously obvious and revolutionary. "Please tell them I'm unavoidably detained with priority matters," he instructed. "The vice president can handle introductions." James blinked with surprise at unprecedented instruction before nodding and retreating discreetly. Trinity's expression registered similar shock at Gabriel's choice of personal connection over professional obligation. "You didn't need to do that," she said quietly. "I did," Gabriel contradicted gently, "not as grand gesture, but as first step toward integration rather than division. You're right about my compartmentalization. It's fear disguised as organizational principle." The honesty between them, hallmark of their connection from beginning, gradually eased tension that had accumulated throughout evening. As they talked beneath star-scattered sky, Gabriel acknowledged deeper truths about his reluctance to fully integrate Trinity into all aspects of his life. Not shame regarding her background, but fear of vulnerability if professional and personal. Worlds merged completely. Their conversation continued past midnight, honest exchange creating pathway toward reconciliation that honored Trinity's legitimate hurt without defensive minimization. When they finally returned to the gala's concluding moments, Gabriel introduced her to remaining colleagues with simple clarity that acknowledged their relationship's significance without qualification or unnecessary explanation. The evening ended with tentative restoration of trust, though underlying questions remained as they rode home in contemplative silence. Trinity's head rested against Gabriel's shoulder in gesture suggesting forgiveness, without completely erasing evening's painful revelations. "I need time to process tonight," she said quietly as they reached her apartment door. Her expression contained compassion alongside lingering hurt. Space to consider what integration between our worlds realistically means. Gabriel nodded, recognizing legitimacy of her request despite desire to resolve discomfort immediately. "I understand." She kissed him briefly, affection without passion, signaling emotional distance despite physical proximity. "Good night, Gabriel." Watching her door close, Gabriel confronted uncomfortable recognition that tonight had revealed fundamental question requiring answer beyond immediate reconciliation. Could someone raised with his instinct toward emotional compartmentalization truly provide the integrated connection Trinity deservedly sought? Morning brought no messages from Trinity, unusual silence that spoke volumes about previous evening's impact. Gabriel respected her requested space while struggling against ingrained tendency to retreat into work rather than confront emotional discomfort. Days passed with minimal contact, brief texts exchanging essential information rather than meaningful connection. Gabriel found himself increasingly restless, professional accomplishments providing hollow satisfaction compared to relationships' deeper fulfillment. When Trinity finally suggested meeting at the community garden where their story began, Gabriel arrived early, sitting beneath the willow tree that had witnessed their initial authentic connection. Autumn had transformed the garden, summer's abundance yielding to bronze and gold that suggested beauty in transition rather than ending. Trinity arrived wearing simple jeans and sweater, her natural beauty requiring no enhancement, yet striking Gabriel with renewed force after their separation. She settled beside him on weathered bench, maintaining slight physical distance that reflected emotional caution. "I've been thinking about us," she began without preamble, directness unchanged despite recent conflict. "About whether the distance between our worlds can truly be bridged." Fear constricted Gabriel's chest, possibility of losing her suddenly, terrifyingly real. "I believe it can," he offered, voice steadier than his emotions. With conscious effort and honest communication, Trinity nodded slowly, considering his response with characteristic thoughtfulness. The gala highlighted something I've sensed, but avoided acknowledging: that integration requires significant adjustment from both of us. Your world values appearance and influence. Mine prioritizes authenticity and service. Those differences create natural tension. Her assessment contained uncomfortable truth Gabriel couldn't deny. Their worlds operated on fundamentally different principles, his emphasizing strategic achievement, hers valuing meaningful contribution regardless of recognition. Different values don't necessarily conflict, he suggested, though uncertainty colored his tone. They can complement each other when approached with mutual respect. Trinity's smile held sadness rather than agreement. In theory, perhaps, but reality requires compromise that sometimes sacrifices authenticity for acceptance. She paused, gathering courage for difficult truth. I'm not willing to become a palatable version of myself to fit comfortably in your world, Gabriel. The statement hung between them, not accusation, but recognition of fundamental challenge their relationship faced. Gabriel reached for her hand, relief flooding through him when she didn't withdraw from contact. I would never ask that of you, he said with absolute conviction. Your authenticity is precisely what I value most. Your unwillingness to perform expected roles or pretend interest in shallow pursuits. Trinity studied their joined hands, vulnerability evident beneath her usual strength. Yet your world requires precisely such performance. The question becomes whether our relationship can withstand that fundamental contradiction. Gabriel recognized crucial crossroads they'd reached, moment requiring complete honesty rather than comfortable reassurance. I don't know, he admitted, finally. I only know life without you now seems unimaginably empty. Whatever adjustments necessary for our worlds to integrate seem insignificant compared to that alternative. His candor, acknowledging uncertainty while affirming commitment, visibly touched Trinity. Something shifted in her expression as she recognized courage required for such vulnerable truth rather than confident promises he couldn't guarantee. I need to visit my grandmother for a few days, she said finally. She's having minor surgery, and I promised to help during recovery. The time apart might provide clarity for both of us. Gabriel nodded, understanding her need for separation while dreading absence that might become permanent. As they walked toward the garden exit, autumn leaves crunching beneath their feet created melancholy soundtrack to conversation that had revealed relationship's fundamental vulnerability without resolving it. At Trinity's car, Gabriel gathered courage for question he'd avoided throughout their discussion. When you return, will we have chance to continue building what we've started? Trinity's expression softened with compassion that provided hope without certainty. I truly don't know, Gabriel. Some questions require distance to answer clearly. Her honesty, painful yet respectful, reflected relationship's foundation despite current fragility. Gabriel watched her drive away, autumn wind carrying leaves in spiraling dance that seemed appropriate metaphor for emotions swirling without clear resolution. The following week passed with excruciating slowness, Gabriel moving through professional obligations with mechanical precision, while emotional attention remained fixed on unanswered questions about Trinity's return. Their communication remained minimal, brief updates about her grandmother's recovery without deeper emotional content. On the seventh day, Gabriel returned from client meeting to find small envelope on his desk, delivery requiring override of security protocols that suggested his assistant's involvement. Inside, he found simple note in Trinity's elegant handwriting. Your third chance awaits when you find your courage. The message's brevity contained volumes within its simple statement, acknowledgement of their original challenge alongside recognition that relationships' future depended not on practiced touch, but authentic courage to integrate worlds previously kept separate. Gabriel sat motionless at his desk, message creating clarity that weeks of analysis had failed to provide. The choice before him suddenly crystallized with perfect simplicity. Continue pattern of compartmentalization that had characterized his life or embrace integration Trinity rightfully sought. With decision came unexpected lightness. Fear replaced by determination, as Gabriel recognized path forward with perfect clarity. His assistant appeared momentarily startled when Gabriel emerged from his office with unprecedented instruction. Cancel everything for the next week. Family emergency requiring immediate attention. The unprecedented request raised eyebrows but met no resistance. Testament to Gabriel's professional capital accumulated through years of unwavering commitment to corporate obligations. Within hours, arrangements were complete, leaving only implementation of plan that felt simultaneously terrifying and absolutely necessary. As autumn wind scattered golden leaves across city streets, Gabriel's car headed toward coastal highways, carrying revelation Trinity had sought since their relationship began. Complete confidence not merely in physical touch, but emotional commitment, transcending boundaries between carefully separated worlds. Chapter 9. Rain-soaked vows. The coastal town where Josephine had grown up embodied everything Gabriel's urban existence lacked. Weathered buildings with genuine character, relationships built on generational continuity, pace dictated by natural rhythms rather than corporate calendars. After a week of Trinity's silence following the disastrous gala, Gabriel had made a decision that led him here. Finding her grandmother's cottage proved challenging. The address led to an overgrown driveway, nearly hidden between more recently constructed vacation properties. Rain had begun falling steadily, turning the unpaved road to mud that threatened to trap his city-appropriate vehicle. Abandoning the car, Gabriel continued on foot, rain soaking through his wool coat as he navigated. The winding path, trees glistening with moisture, created a natural archway leading toward distant glow of windows, barely visible through dense foliage. The cottage materialized gradually, weathered clapboard structure whose architectural simplicity contained integrity missing from more ostentatious surroundings. Smoke curled from stone chimney, suggesting occupancy that accelerated Gabriel's heartbeat with nervous anticipation. Standing in pouring rain, Gabriel confronted the moment of truth his journey had been building toward. The symbolic significance wasn't lost on him, willingly abandoning comfort and control to stand vulnerable before a woman whose acceptance remained uncertain. Unlike their first meeting's accidental storm, this deliberate immersion in discomfort represented conscious choice rather than circumstance. Through rain-streaked windows, Gabriel glimpsed Trinity's familiar silhouette moving within golden lamplight, unaware of his presence. The simple intimacy of this unguarded moment tightened his chest with emotion that transcended mere longing. Gathering courage shaped by weeks of reflection, Gabriel approached the weathered porch steps. Rather than knocking immediately, he stood, in steady downpour, face tilted upward to receive rain's baptismal quality. For his entire adult life, Gabriel had avoided discomfort through careful planning and precise control. Standing willingly in cold autumn rain represented deliberate surrender of that lifelong pattern. Voice carrying through storm's persistent percussion, Gabriel called her name, not an urgent shout, but steady declaration of presence that required acknowledgement. When no immediate response came, he called again, volume increasing with growing determination. The porch light flickered on, illuminating his rain-drenched figure as the door opened to reveal Trinity's startled expression. She wore a simple cotton dress and cardigan, hair gathered in casual arrangement, suggesting relaxed evening without expectations of company. "Gabriel!" Confusion colored her voice. "What are you doing here? You're completely soaked." Instead of immediately seeking shelter, Gabriel remained deliberately in the rain, water streaming down his face. "I found my courage," he stated simply, words carrying weight beyond their surface simplicity. Trinity's expression transformed gradually, surprise yielding to understanding as she recognized significance of his rain-soaked pilgrimage. She stepped onto the porch, protection of roof creating boundary between her dry comfort and his deliberate discomfort. "You could have called," she observed, though hint of smile suggested appreciation for dramatic gesture uncharacteristic of his usual calculated approach. Gabriel shook his head, water scattering from rain-darkened hair. "Some messages require presence rather than convenience. Some journeys matter precisely because they're difficult." "You're really standing in the rain making declarations instead of calling my cell phone," she noted, wonder gradually replacing confusion. "Who are you and what have you done with Gabriel Laurent?" The teasing tone contained genuine question, recognition that man standing before her differed significantly from one who had carefully compartmentalized their relationship. At the gala, Gabriel moved forward, mounting first step while remaining exposed to continuing rainfall. "I'm becoming someone willing to appear foolish rather than maintain comfortable distance," he answered honestly. "Someone who recognizes walls between different aspects of life protect nothing worth preserving if they separate me from you." The simple declaration, delivered without rehearsed eloquence but authentic emotion, visibly affected Trinity. She descended one step, reducing distance between them while still maintaining separation between wet and dry. "Impressive words," she acknowledged cautiously. "But dramatic gestures don't necessarily indicate lasting change." Gabriel nodded, accepting legitimacy of her skepticism. "Your right to question whether momentary courage translates to sustained integration can only offer commitment to recognizing when old patterns resurface and choosing different path forward." "Why now?" she asked, question containing layers beyond obvious timing. "What changed since I left? I realize compartmentalization isn't organizational strategy, but fear disguised as efficiency. Keeping you separate from professional identity wasn't protecting you from tedious obligations, but protecting me from vulnerability your presence creates." His candor, acknowledging unflattering truth rather than noble intention, visibly impacted Trinity. She descended another step, rain occasionally reaching her through erratic wind despite porch roof's protection. "Vulnerability frightens you. That much?" she asked softly. Gabriel nodded, rain mingling with what might have been tears on his cheeks. "When you truly see someone, as you've seen me from our first meeting, their capacity to hurt you becomes immeasurable. I built my life around preventing exactly that possibility." The honest admission created palpable shift between them. Trinity descended final step, rain now reaching her as protection of shelter gave way to shared exposure. "And now?" she prompted gently. "Now I recognize life constructed around avoiding pain contains nothing worth protecting," Gabriel answered, reaching slowly toward her face with rain-soaked hand. "True confidence isn't absence of fear, but willingness to remain present despite it." His fingers traced gentle path along her cheekbone, rainwater transferring from his skin to hers in baptismal connection. Unlike previous touches, hesitant first attempt beneath willow tree or passionate but restrained caresses during coastal weekend, this contact contained absolute certainty despite its gentleness. Trinity's eyes closed briefly, recognition flickering across her features as she registered fundamental difference in his touch. When she looked at him again, previous guardedness had yielded to cautious hope. "Your third chance," she acknowledged softly. Gabriel nodded, hand now cradling her face with confident tenderness that required no passionate intensity to demonstrate complete commitment. Not planned or calculated, but genuine certainty that touching you matters more than remaining safely distant. Trinity stepped fully into the rain then, allowing weather to soak her clothing alongside his in symbolic abandonment of separation. Her hands rose to frame his face, thumbs tracing features with matching confidence that mirrored his own certainty. "I never expected you to be perfect," she said, voice barely audible above rainfall. Only authentic, same person in all contexts. Rather than chameleon adapting to different environments, Gabriel's other hand found her waist, drawing her closer with gentle insistence that contained nothing of hesitation or uncertainty. I spent so many years becoming whatever each situation required that authenticity felt like vulnerability rather than integrity. You helped me recognize difference between adaptation and fragmentation. Their bodies aligned perfectly despite rain-soaked clothing creating cold barrier between skin. When Trinity rose slightly on tiptoes, Gabriel met her halfway, their lips connecting with warmth that defied surrounding chill. Unlike previous kisses, exploration, or passion, this contact represented covenant more than question. They stood fully exposed to elements deliberately uncomfortable, yet perfectly aligned in acceptance of vulnerability as strength rather than weakness to overcome. When they finally separated slightly, Trinity's smile contained wonder alongside acceptance. "You actually did it," she observed, something like pride warming her voice. "Found confidence that transcends circumstances or audience." "You always saw what could exist beneath what did exist," Gabriel acknowledged, gratitude evident, beneath obvious relief. "Your challenge created possibility I wouldn't have discovered without your perception." Trinity laughed softly, joy replacing previous tension as rain gradually lessened around them. "I never actually expected marriage tonight, you know. The original challenge was impulsive metaphor rather than literal expectation." Gabriel's answering smile contained matching amusement alongside serious intent. "Yet here I stand, having fulfilled conditions with absolute confidence, in touching you without hesitation or uncertainty." Lightning flashed distantly, illuminating Trinity's face with ethereal quality that emphasized transition from their relationship's stormy uncertainty toward possibility of clearer horizon. Her expression became suddenly serious despite continuing smile. "We still come from different worlds," she reminded him gently. "Integration requires ongoing effort, not single dramatic gesture." Gabriel nodded, acknowledging truth of her observation, without allowing it to diminish moment's significance. Different worlds can still orbit same center when gravity of connection outweighs centrifugal force of separate experiences. The porch light flickered twice in obvious signal from within cottage. "Grandmother's wondering why we're standing in the rain instead of coming inside like sensible people," Trinity explained with affectionate exasperation. Josephine awaited them beside glowing fireplace, assessing Gabriel's rain-soaked appearance with knowing smile that suggested complete understanding despite missing actual conversation. "About time you figured it out, young man," she observed without preamble. "Some lessons require getting thoroughly soaked before their meaning becomes clear." Later that evening, as they shared tea before crackling fire in clothes borrowed from previous visitors, Gabriel felt curious lightness despite day's emotional complexity. Meeting Trinity's eyes across the small room, he recognized that some journeys required getting completely lost before finding true direction home. "I love you," he said simply, the words containing neither dramatic flair nor practiced charm, just absolute certainty. Trinity's smile illuminated her face with joy. "That required no embellishment." "I love you too," she replied, her confidence matching his own, "not despite our differences, but because of how they help us grow." Chapter 10. Eternal Flames. 6 months later, the community garden where their story began transformed into a sanctuary of blooming roses, fragrant herbs, and twinkling lights. Under a perfect spring sunset, a small gathering of loved ones watched as Gabriel and Trinity stood beneath the willow tree that had witnessed their first genuine connection. Josephine, elegant in a turquoise dress that complemented her silver hair, sat in a place of honor. Beside her, Marcus, His previous skepticism softened after witnessing Gabriel's consistent commitment through Trinity's demanding midwifery program, nodded approval as the couple exchanged vows they had written themselves. "I promise to touch you with confidence," Gabriel vowed, his voice steady and sure, "not just physically but emotionally and spiritually, to remain present in all aspects of our life together, integrating worlds rather than dividing them." Trinity's eyes glistened with tears as she responded, "I promise to see you, not just who you present to the world, but who you truly are beneath carefully constructed walls, to challenge you when necessary and support you always." When Gabriel slipped the ring onto Trinity's finger, his hands no longer trembled. The simple gold band, engraved with rosemary sprigs for remembrance, represented not just commitment, but transformation. Trinity's answering smile held all the joy and recognition he had sought his entire life without knowing it. "By the authority of love that transcends circumstance," the officiant announced, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Their kiss sealed promises made not just today, but from their very first rainy encounter, promises of authenticity, courage, and the vulnerable certainty that comes from truly being seen. As guests gathered for the celebration, Gabriel caught sight of his assistant James raising a toast with Marcus, their unlikely friendship a testament to the integration of worlds, once kept carefully separate. Nearby, Trinity's hospital colleagues mingled with Gabriel's architectural team, boundaries dissolving through genuine connection rather than formal networking. The garden itself now expanded through Gabriel's foundation to include educational programs for neighborhood children and healing spaces for community use, embodied their shared vision. What began as personal sanctuary had grown into communal resource bridging differences through common purpose. Later, in their honeymoon cottage by the sea, the same coastal house where Gabriel had finally found his courage, they created their own paradise of passion and tenderness. As moonlight filtered through windows left deliberately open to ocean breezes, Trinity traced the contours of her husband's face. "Did you ever imagine that day in the garden that we would end up here?" she asked, her body pressed intimately against his beneath silk sheets still warm from their lovemaking. Gabriel captured her hand, pressing a kiss against her palm with absolute confidence. "No," he admitted honestly. "I was too afraid then to imagine anything this meaningful." "And now?" Trinity whispered, her fingers trailing down his chest with the practiced familiarity of a woman who knew exactly how to ignite her lover's passion. "Now I can't imagine any other path," Gabriel replied, his touch sure and claiming as he pulled her beneath him. "Every step, even the painful ones, led exactly where we were meant to be." As their bodies joined once more in the perfect rhythm they had discovered together, Gabriel marveled at how completely Trinity had transformed him, from a man afraid of vulnerability to one who embraced it as his greatest strength. Her soft gasps of pleasure against his neck, the way her fingers pressed into his shoulders, the perfect trust in her eyes as she surrendered to sensation, all testified to the journey from hesitant touch to absolute confidence. "I love you," he whispered against her lips as passion built between them. The words, once so difficult to express, now flowed as naturally as breath itself. Outside their window, waves crashed against the shore in eternal rhythm, while inside, two souls who had found each other against all odds surrendered to the certainty that some love stories are written in the stars long before we have the courage to read them. Later, as Trinity slept peacefully in his arms, Gabriel gazed at the sprig of rosemary she had placed on their bedside table, a reminder of their first meeting and the challenge that had ultimately led to this perfect union. In the moonlight streaming through open windows, he made a silent vow to touch her with confidence every day of their lives. Not just physically, but with the unwavering emotional presence that had transformed a chance encounter in a rainy garden. into the most beautiful love story either could have imagined.